We're here on the Everyday Educator Show, and we just want to introduce ourselves. First, by starting off, what is Everyday Educators? So, we are two, as you say, students of education. Students of education. So, we wouldn't consider ourselves experts, but those who look intently and study intently on education. And yeah, just two folks who are passionate about the classroom, passionate about community, and we are coming together to speak with some folks and to do two things. One, to connect the classroom to the real world, right? We realize that by the time something new and interesting happens in the industry, it takes a while for that to be distilled into a curriculum into the classroom. But we also want to help prepare, the next engineers, product developers, and other amazing folks today. And so, that's what you can expect from our show. Am I missing anything there?
Nope.
Okay. And one of those uh, amazing people we have here, we have Brother Toriono Granger. Uh, he is a engineer. He is a product developer, and he is, as we say, the father of the hood. He's all things parental. Now, you want to speak a little bit about Mr. Granger?
Um, he's a guy that always shows up. It's Saturday morning. It's 9 a.m. there. He's there. At my first school, I remember asking him to come and talk to my students for career day during the workday since kids are in school. And he showed up. He's a guy that just continues to show up for us. He's honest. Sometimes we don't like that. Most people don't like that, but he gonna sit you down and tell you the truth about yourself anyway. And so we appreciate you.
Okay. Why don't you say hello to the people? You gotta unmute.
Hello, people. So, good morning. I'm a little new to this, and these two young people with who created this platform, Everyday Educators, are two young people who I find to be inspiring, and they do tolerate some of my commentary. But so Toriano is my name, and I'm glad to be here. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about in detail, but I'm from Chicago. Grew up my earlier years on the West Side. Ended up moving to the South Side later on. Went to college here and there. Um, as Jeremy suggested, I do have a degree in engineering, and later on went to business school. But spent most of my career professionally doing a lot of work around manufacturing and engineering and new product development and innovation. But I mean, I like to describe that as what I do professionally. I don't necessarily like to define myself as that, right? I do think that education is an important important topic for us to discuss, and particularly how we leverage what true education really is, and how we leverage that for enhancing and uplifting our communities. So I'm happy to engage in this conversation.
Mute up for me, just so we don't start that feedback. Mute. That was very professional. I don't really see this side of him, so I appreciate it. So we're gonna get into our first segment today. It is actual factual. We just talk about a little bit of news or something outstanding. This is coming to you from InsideHigherEd.com. There was a report released yesterday from the House of Representatives Subcommittee on Higher Education. I am reading this so that I am as factual as possible. But there was a report, and they talked about the cost versus the value of education, of higher ed specifically, both to students and taxpayers. In this session, the two sides discussed accountability and transparency in the form of programs and institutions that receive federal funds, um, but that are not necessarily value adding to the market. Here's one quote. Republicans are preparing to reauthorize the Higher Education Act of 1965, which hasn't been updated since 2007. And these priorities include expanding the Pell Grant program and reforming the student loan system to eliminate Grad Plus loans. Now, I can say as a current PhD student, shout out to Hampton, go Pirates. I'm very anxious about this. Um, but that brings us to uh, what I want to talk about today is that one solution that was highlighted was the Biden administration roadmap to success job support programs. I know that's a lot, that's a mouthful. This is from whitehouse.gov. The purpose of this collaborative vision is to build a workforce by ensuring every American, whether they go to college or not, will have equitable access to high quality training, education, and services that provide a path to a good career without leaving their community. Question to you all, and May, if you reflect on your college preparedness, were you prepared? And is there something that you wish before going to college?
I think I was super prepared for college, or like my, are you asking like my high school prepare me for college, or did college
Oh, let me
prepare
be
me
specific.
for?
This is like before and during college, right? Because
Okay.
you know,
So
different.
I don't know if I felt prepared for college. I didn't feel inadequate in any way, but I didn't go. I think my inadequacies were in my own head. I didn't go away to school, and so I really worried about like if I was good enough, if I was smart enough, if I could make it through. But I landed at a really great school. Shout out Chicago State University. They were good to me. And I was a student, like I said, that had a lot of insecurities around my own learning and my own abilities. And that freshman year experience team just kind of like wrapped me up in all the support that I needed. And they talked to my mom. My mom was up there at the first couple of days, and they were like, "We'll get her through. She'll be fine." And I was, and I felt overly prepared coming out of their African American Studies program. I learned how to present my thoughts in an organized way. I learned how to defend my thoughts. I learned how to write. I learned how to critically think. I learned how to read. Um, and not just like picking up big words off of a page, but really like taking the information that I was reading off of a page. And so when I came out, I felt ready.
Mm,
I was ready for the world, and I still feel that way.
okay. What about you, Brother Granger? How your college preparedness back in the members only days?
So, so I was fortunate to go to Whitney Young for high school, right? So the program at that time was pretty rigorous, and I would say that I was presented with in high school the the type of rigor that one would expect to see, or at least preparing for what we were expecting to see in college, particularly going into a program in engineering. I will say though that I individually was not as prepared as I would have liked to have been, and I think that had a lot to do with a couple things. One, um, the the degree to which I um, immersed myself in the work at Whitney Young in certain subjects could have been more intense, and I would have been more prepare for what was yet to be something that was a bit more rigorous, from a math and science perspective. But then the other piece that I think gets missed when we talk about education, um, is the gap between, particularly as one being, of African descent in America, um, understanding what um, understanding the importance of knowing who you are and knowledge of self, and how when you go into yet that environment, which is more representative of what the world will be, um, understanding from a socialization perspective, understanding from a understanding of social norms and acculturation, like what is your real purpose in the world, and how important it is for to have this alignment between what your purpose in the world is, and that what you're and that which you are studying is, and how that can be a difference in how you embrace the work that you're doing in school, and then it help to guide you into various majors and even what you end up doing after school. So I think not having that true alignment going in, which I think is a gap in my true education, and having to work through that simultaneously with the rigors of coursework and stuff, made college a little challenging for me. But then I got through it, and it was cool. And I think I'm a better person as a result.
All right. Well, I'm going to dig in a little more on that. So, if we were to bring all of your teachers, high school, middle school, West Side educators, shout out to the West Side educators. If we bring them all to a room and ask them about Brother Granger, I forgot which one you are on the depth chart, but you're one of the Grangers. And what would all of them say? What would the consensus be? The overwhelming consensus be about you as a student? What kind of student you were?
Wow, the consensus. Um, I'd have to break that up into groups. I would say that the so I went to William Penn on the West Side until seventh grade, right? Middle seventh grade. I would expect that all of my teachers from that chapter of my life would have said, here is one of the more talented folks that we've seen come through here, and he's going to do great things. He's probably going to represent us. I would say that would be what they would say.
And then what happened when you became a Dolphin?
Okay, come on, man. Come on, man. I'm getting to it. Transitioning to Whitney Young, I would say that the teachers would fall into two camps. One camp would be, hey, this is a really promising young man, and he's going to do great things. The other camp, which I think is a smaller camp, would say, you know what, he can do a lot better.
And the second camp, are those the math and science teachers?
No, the second camp would be more a handful of, I would say, English, and yeah, I would say the English teachers. I didn't take reading too seriously
Ah.
in that stage of my life, and that and I think a large part of that had to do with me not really seeing the connection between what was being put in front of me as reading material, and therefore I just didn't want to be bothered with it. Right? I was never one did not like to read. I used to read encyclopedias, but it was something that was my choice. But when given the assignment to read Shakespeare and read Old English literature, reading Beowulf and that sort of stuff, I, I, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Right, so I didn't do the work. So I would expect that those three teachers, I would say, would have not as fond of they would not view me in the same way as the other teachers would.
I see. It sounds personal, and I like it. I'm here for it. I resonate with that. Instead of reading the Boxcar Kids or the Pearl, I read every Walter Dean Myers book, fifth, sixth, seventh grade, because it was just more culturally relevant to me, not knowing that it was, some would say a little more rigorous as well. Um, so I'm rolling with that. What about you, Nate? You had some questions for Brother Granger.
Yes. So I want to talk. I know you said you went to Whitney Young. You left Penn in seventh grade when you were going into seventh grade. Did you go into Whitney Young seventh and eighth grade program?
Yeah. Yes.
And how'd you land there?
How did I land there?
Yeah, so like did somebody recommend you to go to Whitney Young? Was that just a natural place that students from Penn matriculated to?
No.
Like how'd you end up there?
No, I think there are only several folks that went there from Penn from that era. I, to be honest, I don't recall. I don't recall exactly how it happened. What I do, the only thing I remember is I was in seventh grade, and I remember being pulled out of class to go take a test in some counselor's office, right? And I didn't think anything of it. It was just a test. So I go, okay, well, let me just take a test. And then some time later, my mom got a letter suggesting it, that I had been accepted to go to Whitney Young, and there's a spot open, and I transferred in the middle of the year. So I started in January of seventh grade. One of the things that my mother told me years later, maybe 30 years later, was that, well, first, I didn't want to go, right? I didn't want to leave where I was. But my mother made me go. But the other inside story that I didn't know anything about was a conversation that she had with the principal at the time of Penn, who suggested to my mother that I not go immediately, that I wait. And my mother said to him, and I won't say his name, he says, "Don't your son go to this school?" And he was like, "Yes." Well, if that school's good enough for your son, then he's good enough for mine too. So apparently that was what one of the nails in the coffin that led my mom to force me to go in the middle of the year.
Shout out to Mama Granger. I just had to say that.
And do you think, well, we already talked about your path from Whitney Young into college. What I really want to talk about is we've had a lot of conversations about how you have curated the educational path of your children. And so when we were talking about this episode, you were the first person that came to mind because I think it's so interesting what you did with them as a parent. And so what I want to know, what we want to know is kind of like, how did you curate their educational path and when did you start doing that?
Well, first, I would think it'd be unfair to say that I did that, because I didn't. I mean, it was my their mother and myself did that, right? I'm not I'm not going to take all the credit for that by any means. Um, I would say that she, um, my children's mom, she did a lot of or most of the the groundwork and the effort towards trying to find the most um, the most beneficial preschool situation for our children, right? And a lot of the groundwork relative to making sure that certain deadlines were hit relative to um, making sure they're applied to certain schools. The other thing that she did that was profound is after a conversation with one of our neighbors, she discovered a book called Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. And I believe I shared it with the two of you guys. But using that book and working with my daughters every morning or every night, my ex-wife is able to um, work through those lessons and get our children to the point where they can read by the time they were 4 years old. Right. So that, given the natural curiosity of children, enabling them to read that early in life makes them, and I watched this, it made them pay attention to more of their world than others did, right? So whenever there were words, they were reading the words, right? And they were absorbing what was going on, right? So they learned how to read phonetically, and they just explored things that way. I would say um, what I did was I talk to my children about everything that is going on in the world, right? Um, I made sure that they had certain experiences um, that were grounded in expanding their curiosity um, and trying to ground them in their knowledge of who they are as African children and and the connection between that, that history and what our obligation is in society, right? On top of all that, all the math and science stuff that I can get them to engage in. So I would say I don't know if that's really answering the question, right? But repeatedly challenging my children that they can do whatever it is that they want to do. There's nothing's too hard, and making sure that the standards are always high.
Good answer.
I
Hear me?
want to jump in from our script, our pre-written script here. Right now, you have a young lady who's preparing for college. Preparing for college.
Yeah.
And so, as a college graduate from several institutions, a former Dolphin, and how can you speak to uh, your college going process compared to that of um, your daughters now? And specifically because there are, a lot of parents that are listening and who are soon or currently, have their children that they're going to get ready, and they can only rely on the information they had whenever they went, right? Um, and so, yeah, just kind of, speak to that a little bit.
Now, this sounds like a setup, but I'm gonna answer it anyway. See, uh, I would say that my process, the process that I used when I was trying to go to college and trying to decide, may be viewed as being extreme, and that's fine. It won't be the only thing that I've been accused of as being extreme. But essentially, I knew that I wanted to be an engineer back when I was like in seventh grade, right? Um, so it was clear that that's what my major is going to be. So I had chosen mechanical engineering by sometime in high school. Um, so my college process was simple. It was, what are the best engineering schools in the country? Which ones are nearby? Make sure I apply to all of those and to the best. And then let me apply to some others that are um, not necessarily as high ranking and hard to get into, just to make sure I can get into college. I applied. I got into the University of Illinois. I got some significant financial aid. It's only 2 hours away from home. There was done. Stop looking. Um, and I decided sight unseen. I didn't need to go visit the campus. I mean, the 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 size of the dorm room and what the dining hall looked like and what the lecture halls looked like, it would not have affected my decision. So I didn't need to see it. So I decided, and then I went. Um, now, the conversations with my daughter is a bit different, right? In today's world, there's a whole lot of other stuff that people consider, and not being as sensitive about it, I don't consider it to be all that important. So, but in my conversations with my daughter, I am trying to be sensitive to the fact that there are all these other things that emotionally and from a feelings perspective that could influence her, but still advocating for her to be mindful of the things that I would consider to be most important, which is what is it that you're trying to study? What's the utility of the institution that you're applying to? Make sure you apply to some that you can get into, and then make the decision based upon real factors that matter. How much it costs, the reputation, other benefits that may be qualitative that matter, and let's make a thoughtful decision based on that. That road has not been as easy as I had envisioned it to be back when she was first born, but I think it's progressing well. I'm fortunate. She and I are fortunate that she did well in high school, and the thing that I've emphasized to her for the last couple of years, that you've worked hard for the last 11 years of schooling, so your biggest challenge is going to be deciding. So continue the good work and let's figure out what happens. Don't worry about it too much. I'm not answering these questions.
Oh, no, brother. You are. We got a 55-minute show, so you are helping us get to the mark. Everybody who's listening, I just want to let you know this man is being extremely humble. I'm gonna jump in just for a second. As an educator, the intentionality that you have with your children, that you and their mother have, with getting them to read early and often. I remember you in the coffee shop we frequent with your youngest, and she might have been 7, 8. She looked 4. It didn't look like punishment, but you're sitting there and she's writing out times tables like times 12, and just begrudgingly, grinding through that. And then if you kind of look forward to your oldest, right, and the plethora of options that she has because of the work that you all did, that she still at this point can't appreciate,
Right.
And so, to those of you listening out there, just that is kind of why we pivoted to highlight that point, because here at Everyday Educators, we believe everyone is an educator, right? We have in-class educators, the administrators and teachers and program leaders. We have at-home educators, the parents. I'm a godfather of 4 beautiful children. And the community educators, so the professionals, and we all do our part, providing examples, opportunities, and support, for the next wave of future educators, those students that we have, that we are all responsible for. So I just want to thank you for that intentionality, and hopefully she comes back and tells you thank you when she's about 40. But on that note, there is a story that Naomi mandated that that you tell. Yeah, you. So tell us.
Oh, come on, man.
Tell us.
Wait.
Hold on. Tell us about the Camry, the beat up Camry, and the daycare.
The
The
what?
daycare you chose for them, and the beat up Camry, the sacrifice that you
Yes,
made.
you totally bypass how you went through that whole process of getting them into a specific daycare because it would align with the trajectory that you wanted for them
Oh
um
no.
in grammar
Oh
school,
wait.
high school,
Yes.
and the sacrifices you made to make sure that that could happen. I think that
Yeah.
story is important.
Toriana Granger. Toriana Granger story, the Camry and the
I
daycare.
don't know this. I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry.
Well, when I talk about the wind out of the sails, so we kind of just said, but essentially, he told us a story. Your age is showing me, sir. He told us a story that there was a prominent daycare, and you kind of touched on it, that their mother picked out for them. I'm not sure if it was the oldest or the youngest, but I'm assuming it is the oldest. And that the sacrifice that you made is that you had a car that was a little dilapidated in repair, and you continued to drive this car so that your child so that your child would be able to go to this illustrious daycare. That's what this is.
No, I don't remember the story. So
Oh, okay. Well,
we must have gotten it
you don't
twisted.
remember, but that's what we were told. We'll move right along.
Okay.
So reflecting something else that you told me. I hope that you remember.
Okay.
So, is there anything that you would do different? Well, I'm not. You didn't tell me this part.
Thank you.
But is there anything that you would do different as far as their your educational choices for them?
Um. Hmm. Hmm. That's hard to say. That's hard to say. Um, I think that where they landed in preschool was critical, and I think that's again their mother did the work there. It was critical because it was an environment operated by um, black women who really wanted to ensure that young black children succeed, and that's a critical that's very critical for our children. Um, having a high set of expectations for our children at such a young age, and having that being driven by us. Um, I would say um, I wish that I could have. Um, I wish I could have immersed them in more African-centered educational environments as they got older, um, but just wasn't able to pull that off. So I would say that was probably the biggest. It's probably the biggest gap.
All right. So we gonna pivot to kids that aren't yours. So, as someone who, I think what you do is amazing. I look at you, doodling and drawing on your iPad, and somehow that's engineering. Who knew? Um, so, if you were to be speaking with a teacher or an administrator of sorts or a parent, right? What is the best piece of advice you could give to prepare a fifth grader and a high school freshman to do what you do today? Best piece of advice.
A fifth grader, so a fifth grader and a ninth grader, rising fifth grader,
Rising fifth grader and a rising ninth grader.
to do
We need
so.
help.
So here,
They
so
want
this is a rising fifth grader who wants to do engineering-esque stuff, right? You know, creative stuff like that. So I would say the first thing I would tell him, I would tell them, or I would find out if they know how to do fifth grade math at a profound level. So if they don't know fractions, if they can't do decimals, if they don't know their multiplication facts, and I know that sounds like, you know, pretty elementary stuff. If they can't do long division and they can't just click through it, then we need to put them on a program to accelerate to that. Because, and the reason I say that is because all the other math is built on the assumption that you're proficient at that, and if you struggle with that, the math that you see later on will be so much harder, and you'll become discouraged and you'll change. So that was one thing. That I would say that's bare minimum, right? But on top of that, of course, continue to explore and read about all things that are science related, and to tinker, to take things apart and put them back together. Whether that be, you know, physical things or in, you know, if you play video games, all right, don't just play the video games, you know, see if you can create video games, right? For the ninth grader, the ninth grader should be immersing themselves in experiences with people who are actually doing that type of work. So, you know, who do we know that is doing anything related to what you think you're doing, and go actually see it and experience it. That on one end, and then on the other end, again, just making sure you're taking the hardest math and science classes that you can take.
And what about calculus? Tell us about your experience with calculus. This is what I wanted. I know you know this.
Come on, man. No, I just
no. Tell it right. You shortchanged this on the one you forgot. Tell it right.
So I'm sorry for the audience. Unfortunately, I've had many conversations with these people, and they may be getting some of the stories twisted, but that's okay. But on there are probably multiple calculus stories, but the first one I would say is that I have a firm belief that everyone should know how to do calculus, and that everyone, if you want to be a dancer, you should learn calculus, and if you want to be an engineer or a physicist, you should learn calculus. And I say that because I'm a bit biased by that, but I think but calculus starts to explain a lot of what's going on in the world, what happens in the world, right? One. But then I think he may be talking about my experience in high school with seeing calculus for the first time in college. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you couldn't. When you got to college, you saw that they were using that.
I got that. You know. So you know, I always wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be an engineer early on, right? And by the time I got to senior year in high school, there was an AP calculus class, right? So I wanted to take the class. I couldn't take the class because I did not have the honors pre-calculus class, right? So didn't realize that there was a block there, so I couldn't take the AP calculus class. Now, knowing what I know today, I probably could have gotten my mother to go up there and raise hell, and she probably would have got me in. But that's, I didn't know that back then. right? But what I did recall was that, a couple friends that I knew, friends that I had in high school, were in the AP Calculus class, and I remember the book that they had, right? But it was okay, it was cool. But then when I got down to U of I and I took my first calculus class, I recognized the book because it was the same book that they were using in the AP calculus class. And I was like, wow, you know, the way that I'm struggling through this class here in college, um, it could have been, my experience could have been made a lot easier had I merely just taken that AP class, right? But I think that that supports what I was saying earlier about the ninth grader, that you should be taking the hardest class you can wherever you are in high school, because it will benefit you later on.
All right. See, you didn't disappoint. I appreciate that. So we talked about elementary or middle school for those of you out there who have those. We talked about high school. We talked about undergrad. Can you speak to your experience briefly? If you can. No, if you could speak to your experience in grad school, in your MBA programs, and having, you went to school, undergrad engineer, but then you went to get an MBA, and how that has impacted, shaped, influenced, or deterred. Just what forces were acted upon you, at
All right,
Northwestern.
all right. So I did go to Kellogg for MBA, Northwestern, but I went later in my career. So um, I may have been 38. It's 38. I didn't finish until I was like 40. So I was one of the older folks in the evening program when I was there. So um, my I would say that one, is a profound program, and then two, um, I probably got more out of formal education there than I did anywhere. And I think it was largely because of the degree of maturity that I had going in, and um, I guess maybe a better understanding of the world, and having the ability to real time understand the relevance of the work that I was doing, right, to what was happening, you know, in society, or in my own career or experiences at the time. So, um, so I paid a lot of money for it. It was definitely beneficial. Um, how I don't know if I could quantify how beneficial it was, but certainly one of the better experiences I had, and one of the better decisions I made.
Okay. Well, we are coming to the end of our broadcast, but we are going to end with this. We call this our book club. So tell us. Oh, don't sweat. I know you didn't like to read growing up. It's okay. So tell us the best book you ever read and the last book you read. Share with us.
The last book, I'm not finished yet. I'm reading it now. The last book is One Giant Leap. And One Giant Leap is a book about the 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 Apollo program to get to the moon, right? And more dealing with a lot of the hidden small stories associated with that, like all of the little innovative things that needed to be pulled together to make that work, right? That are not talked about. So that's the last one. The best book, or it's either the best book or my favorite book. Which
You know
one?
you don't like. However you want to.
Which one did you say?
The best. I asked
Okay,
you
the best one. Okay, the best one.
but you can say favorite because I made a bet with Naomi. I have the answer, and I just want to see if I'm right.
The best book is 2000 Seasons by Ikwe Arma. It's a novel, and I normally see he's throwing off. See, I normally don't read. I don't read too many novels, but 2000 Seasons is one of those. It's probably the only book I read like 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
Okay. All right. All right. Tell us. I mean, you kind of left it ambiguous. You told us about One Giant Leap. What is 2000 Seasons about? Since you read it a couple times.
Okay, well, so 2000 Seasons, in more words or less, it follows the journey of some young African recently initiated young people through through the perils of trying to get fighting off oppression from what was once the Arab invasions and European invasions in Africa. So it's set in Africa, and all of the work that they were doing to essentially become free. And one of the and I would say, since you're going to ask me about that, and it's funny, when I looked at that book this morning, I didn't open it up. I looked at it and I wanted to grab it, but there was and I can't remember exactly how it went, but there's a scene in the book where the group of young people, and one of the elders, and I forget his name, who was with them, was lamenting about the challenges of fighting off all of these invaders and so forth, and how they can't see victory, right? And they can't see victory in their lifetime. And I remember they were corrected. And again, I wish I could remember the exact words because it was so poetic. But they were corrected by the elder by saying that it is, in more words or less, selfish for us to decide to allow our decision of whether we should fight or not be dependent upon whether or not we can see victory in our lifetime.
I definitely wrote that down so I can look into it. That sounds oddly familiar to the short story your daughter wrote, except for there's no capoeira.
Oh,
I was like, did you just read her book?
oh yeah, that's my daughter's book. Yeah,
Um,
nice. I think it's the name of the book.
yes. For you all who don't know, his daughter's very talented. She's an author among many things. We will all be working for her as
In some way.
as the world ruler. I thought you'd want to say the counter revolution of 1776.
Nah.
So that but see, you never know what you're going to get. Right? Expect the unexpected. So guys, that is our show. We're going to get more into who Nay and I are, where we met, what we're doing here, what Everyday Educators is, and what you can expect. But it's going to be more of this, right? Talking to the community educators, the in-home educators such as Brother Granger here, about all things education and really wanting to connect the community to the classroom. So we thank you. We would not be here in every iteration. We would not be here, without you. So I want to say thank you. Nay?
Thanks, team. We appreciate you.
Oh, you guys are so nice.
Yeah. So we want to hear from you, right? We want to hear from you all. So please, everybody who's listening, everybody who hears us, you can follow us at Everyday Educators on Instagram, or Educate Every Day on the Spill app. Yeah, we done switched over to the Black platform, right? So yeah, IG Spill, you can catch us there. And if you have any questions, if you just want a shout out on the show, Send us an email at info@educateeveryday.com. And remember, we're all educators and we educate every day. Thank you, loved ones. We'll catch you next week. Peace. How do I end this?